And joining us right now is the Republican leader over there in Annapolis for all of the delegates that call themselves members of the Grand Old Party. He is Nic Kipke. And boy, you're living in interesting times there, Delegate Kipke, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it is a grand day to have Governor Larry Hogan leading the helm of the state of Maryland these days. And, things have definitely improved since that election.
Well, okay, but the one thing we thought after this election that we could get Republicans and Democrats in Annapolis to agree on is to get rid of the rain tax. I mean, this is a no-brainer. It is such a hot-button issue for all of the voters of Maryland, no matter their party affiliation. But the Democrats stood in the way of Governor Hogan's attempt to end the rain tax. Why do the Democrats love taxing our rain so much?
Well, I actually think it's really just become a political trophy for them among the left. And so many of them in Annapolis are very concerned about their score from the environmental groups. And as a result, they've basically just ignored the will of Maryland voters. It's wildly unpopular. It's the most divisive issue that we see in polling among most people in Maryland, Democratic voters, Republican, everybody.
Can you tell us quickly can you tell us what happened here? Why did it die in committee? And is there any way to revive this movement to get rid of the rain tax?
Yeah. So the bill that the governor had introduced this year had a hearing in the House committee that deals with environmental issues, and they quickly voted on it, which tells you they had no intention of passing it. It died, of course, on a party line vote. All the Democrats voted against it. Those Democrats are listed on Change Maryland's Facebook page if you'd like to give them a piece of your mind. But there is hope. I mean, the Senate President Mike Miller, some people love him, some people hate him, but the bottom line is he understands politics. And he's pushing through a bill in the Senate that would essentially do what Larry Hogan wants. So we expect that bill to pass the Senate. It's going to come over the House, and we're going to do everything we can to ask Marylanders to get behind it and to, build pressure on the House of Delegates leadership.
I really am quite surprised that these Democrats want to, sort of stake their political reputations on supporting the rain tax. Were you surprised by that?
I am surprised. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they were spanked by the voters last election. Everyone expected Republicans to lose seats in the House and the Senate because of redistricting. And we reached a record high. I mean, we went from 43 to 50 in a time where people thought we were going to come back with 37 members in the House of Delegates. And I think it's largely due to this, not just the rain tax, but just the onslaught. It's like the taxing terrorism of Maryland Democratic leaders. You mentioned Mike Miller, the president of the Maryland Senate, a Democrat, and he got in trouble on Friday when he made a comment that compared a frequent claim made by Larry Hogan about the Maryland economy. He compared that to Hitler's big lie. It seems like anytime you start to invoke the name of Hitler, it's not going to end well for you. And then he spent the rest of the day saying, no, I wasn't saying Governor Hogan was like Hitler, but it didn't go well for Mike Miller on that issue. Yeah, well, the big lie that they've been telling is we just need to tax a little bit more and we'll have enough money to balance our state budget, eliminate the structural deficit. There are over 40 taxes and fees that these folks have passed over the last 8 years, and yet we still come up red in our budget. On the first day of this session, Larry Hogan announced that he was going to get the fiscal house in order. He introduced a budget that eliminated the structural deficit in his first year as governor. So, hey, I mean, I think the lies being told around here have been coming from the Democratic leaders that, just one more tax and we'll be done. But there's never seems to be an endless supply of taxes that they want to raise.
Yeah, and I'd like to take issue. I don't think Mike Miller got in trouble. I don't see the Washington Post and the Baltimore Sun demanding his resignation for comparing Larry Hogan to Hitler. These guys never get into trouble for that kind of thing. Let's shift over, though, to the Mikulski seat. Boy, oh boy, is everyone scrambling for that seat. I guess the word is out that if you're a Democrat and you're elected U.S. Senate, you pretty much have a job for life. You got Chris Van Hollen out of Montgomery County who wants it. Harry Reid just endorsed him, but Nancy Pelosi tried to talk him out of it. But now he's going to see some competition. From your perspective, how do you see the Democratic primary going for this seat?
Well, I think it's terrific. As a Republican leader in Maryland, this is really the best scenario for us. So many high-profile Democratic candidates. Donna Edwards supposedly is announcing tomorrow officially, and it's going to create quite an opportunity for some big-name folks to enter into that race. And I think it's really great because we're going to see some down ballot candidates like members of the House of Delegates and the Maryland Senate running to fill those congressional seats. And I think it's going to create a great, when incumbents run for another office and it creates a sort of a vacancy there, it gives a chance for challengers to have a better shot at winning. And so it makes it, it's creating a scenario for our next election to see even greater gains for the Republicans in Annapolis.
Well, there's opportunity there, right? I mean, who do you see as the Republicans who will run, let's say, for Van Hollen's seat or for Donna Edwards' seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's too early to tell. There's some folks that have been testing the waters. And I see, you obviously have Kendall Ehrlich, who lives in one of those districts, Bob Ehrlich in another. Kathy Shalega, the House Republican whip, has expressed some interest in running. So there's a lot of opportunity. We have one of the great things right now for Maryland Republicans is we have a deep bench. You have County Executive Shue in Anne Arundel County, a great leader, Barry Glassman, Alan Kittleman. I mean, there's some tremendous leaders on our side of the aisle.
But for the Senate seat, we haven't heard any names. I mean, I'm looking at 3, maybe 4 different Democrats within 1 week who want Mikulski's chair. Why have we not seen a prominent Republican step forward and say, I'm going to run?
Well, there are some that I know are seriously looking at it, but I think the environment is right for people like Larry Hogan to come along. Nobody anticipated Larry Hogan being the governor of Maryland just a few years ago, and I think what Marylanders want is fresh faces. They're willing to vote for sort of a new type of Republican who's looking to focus on the budget, finances, getting our fiscal house in order. And I think it's going to create some opportunity and interest from folks with a business background that might take us all by surprise.
Do you think that the fight between Representative Donna Edwards and Representative Chris Van Hollen could end up really fracturing the Democrats in Maryland? Because, I mean, these are 2 very distinct constituencies who will be represented by those 2 politicians.
I do. I think it's going to create a very unusual political gamesmanship between the 2. Obviously, Donna Edwards represents a big swath of Prince George's County up through Anne Arundel County. And Holland has more of sort of the Montgomery County section. So it's going to be interesting to see. That's where the population of the Democratic voters are in Maryland. And, if more folks get into that race, it will be interesting to see how the votes split out.
Well, and let's face it, identity politics is so important to Democrats in Maryland, and these 2 represent, Donna Edwards represents 2 different identities with African Americans and women. I think Chris Van Hollen needs to check his white privilege and just get out of the race. Who does he think he is?
Nancy Pelosi would have her way, then he will. Listen, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Great talking with you. Take care.